Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the another session of Growth Dialogue by Deutsche Consulting. Today we have Miss Somya Singh, who is a legal consultant at Deutsche Consultants. And today the topic that she is going to cover is all about OECD compliance. That is a new benchmark for global corporates. Welcome to the session, Somya. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, let's start with the session now.
Sure.
What exactly does OECD compliance entail and why has it become so important?
OECD compliance basically just refers to a set of international standards and best practices developed by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development that basically aim to promote privacy, transparency, responsible business practices, and fair tax and anti-bribery practices across all sectors. Practically, it means adopting policies and controls within your business that prevent anti-corruption, ensure transparency, especially in cross-border transactions, and maintain accurate reporting across your supply chain and its transactions. It's become more important because investors and trading partners within industries, and especially regulators as well, now expect consistent and verifiable standards, and because non-compliance can obviously lead to serious financial and sector-wide penalties and threats. Their focus is basically on making sure everything is transparent and above board, basically.
That's very interesting to know. Thank you so much. How do OECD compliance differ from other international compliance framework?
So OECD compliances are very broad in their nature and they're very principle based. So they basically cover tax transparency, anti-bribery, responsible business conduct, and multi-stakeholder guidelines. They also focus on whistleblower protection, which is a very important part of OECD. Unlike some national laws or maybe regional laws, they don't talk about specific penalties or procedures in a very theoretical manner. It focuses on harmonizing expectations across jurisdictions and encouraging best practices. For example, transfer pricing rules, country-to-country reporting, and anti-bribery conventions, basically. National laws generally provide a specific list of musts, while OECD guidelines provide international how-tos and a benchmark for being at a very high standard. Because it's widely accepted by multiple jurisdictions, aligning with OECD standards basically helps companies operate consistently across borders.
That's a very clear picture that you provided to us. Why should Indian companies actually expanding abroad pay close attention to the standards? Like why it is important to pay attention to these standards for OECD compliance?
Indian companies, when they enter markets like the UAE or the EU, the UK, the US, they immediately face partners and customers and obviously regulators who judge them against international norms and standards. Compliance with with OECD standards signals that a company is credible, they're okay to do business with, they're reliable, you can do business with them in the long run, basically. So somebody entering into a joint venture, seeking foreign investment, or opening banking and payment channels. Additionally, many multinational customers and lenders now will require you to be of a certain standard and you need to adhere to these best practices in order to do business with them. For fast-growing Indian firms especially, early alignment reduces the friction, lowers transaction costs, and it would derail market entry if they wouldn't have complied with these things in the beginning.
Okay, all right. That's a very informative insight from your side. Okay, what are the main principles that make up OECD compliance? Basic principles that you can.
At a higher level, there are a few consistent pillars of OECD compliance, which is anti-bribery, anti-corruption, fair trade practices, fair tax practices, and a certain standard of reporting across industries. Strong corporate governance and regulation as well. Each pillar basically emphasizes risk assessment, documentation policies, training, monitoring, and remediation. The common thing in all this is that compliance isn't basically a one-time checklist and a checkbox that every company or sector has to go through. It's a constantly evolving practice that every company has to focus on so that they can build on it and they can improve it and then eventually be more consistent with ESG, with other laws as well.
All right. How does it connect with ESG and responsible business conduct?
So OECD standards and ESG, they overlap heavily, obviously, because ESG gives investors a framework to judge environmental, social, and governance performance, while OECD guidelines tell them how to implement, in part, tell them how to implement ESG guidelines in a very practical way within the company or within any kind of sector.
Okay.
So ESG will set a certain benchmark for these separate three verticals, but OECD will tell you how you can ensure that you have practices that are on a very minute level within your company that can help you reach these standards and maintain them at all times. Having an overlap between ESG and OECD also ensures that companies that are growing and that want to grow into other markets as well, they have a head start from the beginning, basically. So they don't have to set everything up from scratch or start all the reporting from scratch. They can have it from the beginning, and it doesn't take a lot to set up, actually. It's
Correct,
just
yeah.
minute practices within a business. So once that is set up, it's a lot easier for them to grow into other markets as well.
All right. Okay. How, what are the risks of ignoring OECD requirements for global operations?
Ignoring these standards creates multiple risks for a business, obviously. One, evidently, is regulatory enforcement, so you'll face fines and you'll be denied market access, etc. Probably loss of contracts and banking relationships, and significant reputational harm that it's hard to reverse. Even when the company is not directly subject to particular jurisdiction's laws and its partners, clients are, they may have issues in getting to partner with them because obviously between a company that is compliant and a company that's not, a partner
That's
would
correct,
choose a
yeah.
company that is. So it's always better to handle these these investigations and be ahead of these investigations, etc. in time. Ultimately, the cost for a business to be proactive for OECD compliance guidelines is a lot lesser than the cost for them not to be compliant with these guidelines.
All right. Okay. That was very insightful. How can consulting firms help corporates align with these complex frameworks?
Consulting firms translate basically high standards into practical and company-specific programs, and actually within the company, department-specific programs as well. That means conducting risk assessments, drafting policies, anti-bribery, anti-tax, as I mentioned, whistleblower protection, and compliance frameworks. Building monitoring, reporting, and compliance frameworks and mechanisms within a company and training all the staff can be a huge task for a company. So consultants and auditors, etc., will basically help the company go into the nitty-gritty of everything and ensure that all this is structured and put into the company on a base level so that people are trained into this, they are used to this within the company, so that when it does come to a higher level of the company, maybe partnering with a different company or JVs or M&A, etc., they can just put together a reporting structure instead of putting the entire structure in place from the beginning.
That's very nice and interesting. All right. How does tax transparency mean in practical terms for multinational companies?
Tax transparency involves accurate and timely reporting, obviously, of key tax data across jurisdictions. For example, transfer pricing, country-to-country reports, and ensuring that tax planning is aligned with economic substances as well, and business realities, of course. Practically, it requires good record keeping, clear transfer pricing policies controlled by intercompany and controlled by external auditors. Yeah. Proactive engagement with tax advisors to ensure that local filings meet the international standards that are required for if they are across jurisdictional companies.
How does adherence to OECD guidelines strengthen the company's credibility abroad? What are your thoughts on this?
See, as I mentioned earlier, it is obviously very necessary for a company to be compliant with these OECD guidelines so that in case they have to expand into bigger markets or expand into different sectors within their same market, they don't have much of an issue in doing that. It'll hugely affect your company in the eyes of the customer. Your credibility in terms of how you navigate the market, from a business perspective and from a customer perspective as well. It'll also hugely impact investor relations. It's obviously harder to gather investor and funding if you are not compliant with these guidelines. Again, the choice between somebody who is and somebody who isn't so compliant.
Yeah. All right. What message would you give to Indian corporates preparing to enter any kind of international markets?
The biggest thing to say would be to start early and to start at a grassroots level, basically. treat compliance as a strategic enabler rather than an anchor dragging your business down. Building a pragmatic compliance policy and a roadmap and genuinely adhering to it can help businesses avoid huge risks that they're not that hard to avoid.
Correct, yeah.
Using external advice obviously where it is needed, but to aim to make sure that these processes become a part of an everyday of a business basically. And doing so will reduce obviously friction. They'll protect market value. They'll make your international expansion much smoother. Ultimately, credibility and transparency are huge advantages for a business in any sector. And making sure your company is compliant with these will hugely aid your growth instead of drag you down.
Thank you so much for providing clarity on the same. As we all know, Ms. Somya Singh actually provided a real clear picture regarding the OECD compliances and the new benchmark for global corporates. She is our experienced lawyer and also a UK qualified lawyer in our firm. Thank you so much for attending this session, Ms. Somya.
Thank you so much, Krishna.
You're welcome.